Good evening, televiewers. Welcome to Prime my Media Prime, the first for this week. We are sorry for the late start. We make machines at times. They play fast on us. This evening, we're going to be asking the question what we need to be doing this week to understand Cameroon's path to a unitary state. Part 1. We know that we are going to be celebrating the 50th anniversary of the unitary form of Cameroon as a state. So we're starting the series this evening with some panelists. We have Professor Mark Anthony, who is a Pan-Africanist. He is in the house with us. Good evening, welcome.
Good evening, Mr. Leo, and good evening to my fellow panelists and to all of you watching us out there in your houses and to those on social media. I think today's topic is one of those topics that actually entails and demands for expertise, and we believe we will be talking deep and as well as educating you and Cameroonians as a whole in this particular topic in order to help us know where we are going to and where we are coming from.
Okay, we're also in the company of Dr. Lalu Ernest Efim. He is a senior lecturer of history, the Department of History, University of Buea. Good evening, Doctor. We're glad to have you for the first time on Prime Hour.
It's a similar pleasure to be here to share the little I know on Cameroon history and, by extension, Cameroon politics, so that our compatriots out there will understand just the trajectories and the dynamics of this country, which led us into, dissolving what was earlier agreed at Fumban, and moving a little away from the trajectory that was started in 1961 to another one, which has been so controversial. I just hope that with my panelists and you, we would contribute to making Cameroonians understand the truth about Cameroon, historically, politically, and otherwise.
Okay.
Thank you.
We're also in the company of the Secretary General of PAP, the person of Fabrice Lena. Good evening, Fabrice, and welcome.
Good evening, Mr. Leo. Good evening to all the viewers of My Media Prime TV. Good evening to everyone who is contributing for us to realize a new Cameroon in the spirit of our forefathers, in the spirit of the Ngomjuas, in the spirit of the Nde Tumazas, in the spirit of the Enes Mwandi, in the spirit of the true patriots who fought for us to have a stable Cameroon, but they were not given a chance. In the spirit of all those who wanted Cameroon to be a country of justice, of democratic rule of law, of competitive politics. And as we all are here today with this very insightful topic, we are going to disseminate it properly to give our own perspective, interpretative narrative of the understanding of that path to what we call the unitary state of Cameroon now, which according to the Popular Action Party, we say it is a sham, it is unconstitutional, and we will be discussing how far it is unconstitutional here and the history that is being told to our people, how it is full of controversies. Thank you for having me as your guest, Mr. Leo. I hope to make my earnest contribution for the program to be really wonderful.
Okay, we hope to also get in touch with Professor Elvis Ngole Ngole through Skype in Yaoundé. I don't know whether he's there. Good evening, Prof, and welcome. Professor Elvis Ngole Ngole is not yet connected. I'll start with you, Dr. Lalu. You are the historian on this platform. I want us to understand that Cameroon as a unitary state happened overnight, or a process that was engaged by politicians at the time.
Yeah, it didn't just happen out of the blue.
Okay.
It was well calculated by the architect of cost, who was no other person but Ahijo. And that was because even at the time of the construction of the federation, indications are that he had in mind a Cameroon which was beyond the federation. And so it wasn't an accident, it was well planned and executed.
Yeah, it was not. But how did the process actually start? How was it kick-started?
Well, the project...
Because it started with a federation.
Yes.
And then we are in a unitary state.
Exactly. The federation was, in my humble opinion, the best structure of government that would have allowed the entities that came into union in 1961 to express their identities within that structure. And even though in terms of constructing a federal structure, there were lapses, but that framework permitted former British Southern Cameroon, which was then known as West Cameroon, and former French Cameroon, which was known as East Cameroon, to forge ahead while protecting each of the identities within the bigger Cameroon. However, because of political intrigues, manipulation, and even intimidation, there was a project that was initiated by Ahijo. Of course, he had started his project even by 1966 when he, through intimidation and other measures, coerced politicians to dissolve, and for the territory to have just a single party, which was the
Cameroon National Union,
the CNU. And so even at that moment, we were already moving towards, such a dynamic that we are talking about today.
Okay. So you are saying that the signal that showed that we're moving towards a unitary state was the dissolution of political parties. Can we say that?
Mr. Leo, to want to answer that question, I will need to go back to 1945.
Okay.
You see, the whole idea of reunification of Cameroon was initially a French idea, which was actually instituted through the formation of a party called UPC. I'll let you know that UPC was never actually formed by Omnube, as many people consider. He just took leadership. It was actually formed by 2 French citizens, and later on they gave over the leadership to a Cameroonian. That is to make you understand that the idea of unification was never an Anglo, let me use the word, a Southern Cameroon desire. It was forced upon them. So if we go back to 1945, when Omnube took over in 1948, he inherited a dream to reunite the 2 Cameroons, where they considered that the Southern Cameroons and it was supposed to join the motherland, as it was called, la Terre, la Haute la Mer, whatever they call it. So the Southern Cameroons were supposed to join with the motherland, which is the French Cameroon. But I'll remind you that Cameroon was never the colony of France, neither was it the colony of the British. If we can remember, the Germans colonized Cameroon in 1884. And back in 1916, after the First World War, they lose this territory. And by virtue of the fact that Cameroon was their territory, and let me use the word a property, by virtue of the fact that the French and the English won over the Germans, this country became they call it spoils of war, which were actually supposed to be divided. And Cameroon was, the German Cameroon was separated between the French and the English. That particular, I was under the agreement of Simon Milner agreement. In 1919, this became official with the with Germany as well as the United States being witnesses to it. And in 1921, it became an official issue where the Southern Cameroons now was placed, let me use the word, the English Cameroon, because by then there was no separation between the Northern and the Southern, were placed under the British, and the French Cameroon was placed under the French. And this was as a result of the fact that they had agreed, and it became under the League of Nations. It was not a territory of the French, neither of the English. And to make things go well, in 1931, Mr. Leo, the boundaries between the French Cameroon and the English Cameroon were actually drawn, and in 1931 they had to create what we call these foundation stones, or say boundary stones, to make sure that these boundaries were visible, implying that these were two territories. Under international law, these were two political entities that were existing. And when this idea of the unification came into existence, that to me was like trying to violate international law. And so the French first started the idea of reunification because they had an idea of what the Southern Cameroons contain and possesses. And that idea was imparted into the minds of some Southern Cameroonians, which I'll remind us that a lot of them were involved. Even Foncha received part of that indoctrination. I remember in 1954 when the Southern Cameroons had to step out of the Nigerian, the Enugu Eastern House. Something, when they spoke about unification, Ndele was completely against that idea. And they downplayed it because they thought it could never exist, it could never happen.
You are taking us...
Mr. Leo, it is necessary to bring us there for understanding.
The problem is time. I asked a question, you spent almost 5 minutes talking other things. I'm talking about the creation of, the dissolution of political parties.
Yes, Mr. Leo. Let me come back to your question. If you look at the whole idea of the dissolution... Now
you are cheating other parties.
No, I'm not cheating.
Yes.
Coming to the dissolution of these parties, Mr. Leo, that is proof already of the fact that there was something working on the ground. That was not when it started. That had been on the ground. So that idea of dissoluting the political parties that were existing was just to make sure that they prepare the people towards where they were going to.
Okay, we have indications that Professor Elvis Ngole Ngole is there. Good evening, Prof, and welcome to Prime for the first time.
Good evening, Mr. Leo. It's a pleasure sharing this platform with the other distinguished panelists. I look forward to a very rich exchange.
Yes, Prof, I want us to understand when in 1966 parties actually dissolved to form the CNU. Was that a pointer that things were no longer going to be the same towards what we now have as Cameroon today?
Well, 1966 was an important moment in the evolution of the country, because as we all know from history and from historians, when in 1961 the federal constitution came into being and created the federal state of two federated states, one West Cameroon and one East Cameroon, it was very obvious that the multi-partism in the West Cameroon Federated State was not working very well. It was very obvious that the multi-partism was not working very well, and that the federation itself was not working very well. We all know that economically there were problems. politically there were problems because, for example, the majority party then, the KNDP, and the other political parties didn't get along very well. And so, because it had always been the political program of the federal president, President Aito, to have a unit state, he made his first move in 1966 by convincing the other political parties, both in the West Cameroon Federated State and the East Cameroon Federated State, to come together in the form of a unified political party that was called CNU. And that's what we had in 1966. But I think that maneuver was a pointer, as you just said, was a pointer to what was going to come, because as he succeeded in having a unified one single political party in 1966, it was only obvious that the next step would be for him to get his the unitary state as was his goal, his vision from the beginning. So for us, or for me, that wasn't a surprise at all, and I don't think he was wrong either, because he already, from the word go, in Pumban, made it known that preference, his option and his goal was to get Cameroon to become a unitary state. Now, when the federal system came in being from 1st of October 1961, that was between him and then Vice President John Fonja. But he didn't stop there. He knew that at some point he would get to his ultimate goal, which was to have a unitary state rather than a federal state. And of course, in 1972, we all know what took place. There was the referendum, and that referendum was a constitutional referendum. It was legitimate, it was legal, it was constitutional, and he got to his goal, the unitary state.
Now, Professor, you say that the goal at Fumban, according to the then President Amadou Ahidjo, was to get Cameroon towards a unitary form as a state. Now, are we saying here that politicians from West Cameroon at the time did not see the tendencies that were exhibited by Ahidjo at the time? Were they manipulated? Were they naive? And how did they see the interest of West Cameroonians in the definite plan of President Amadou Ahidjo?
Well, I think I wouldn't want to say that politicians then were naive or that they didn't understand. I think that at that time, politics being what it is, their understanding of the constitutional arrangement by which a federal system was set up, perhaps they didn't have a mastery of the contours of that setup. And with time, President Ahidjo was, as a very astute politician and, of course, federal president, was able to succeed to get his goal of the unitary state by convincing even the politicians of the Federated State of West Cameroon across the political spectrum, across the partisan spectrum, because the referendum that took place in 1972 there was a campaign 2 weeks before the referendum, and everybody went to their hometown. That campaign took place, and the referendum took place, and the votes were counted in each of the federated states, and the results are all known. In each of the 2 federated states, the results were 99 point something percent in each of them. And so there may be some who may not have agreed with that or who may not have been happy with the outcome, but the fact is, it was constitutional, it was legitimate, and politically it was correct, and the federal president got his goal. which has always been there since 1961.
The constitutionality of what took place in 1972, actually it has been very controversial, and but you said it was very constitutional. Yeah, can you explain so that our audience understand?
Yes, you know, the 1961 Federal Constitution had in its Article 47, and I'm sure those who have a copy will read it. The article referred to the fact that no maneuver or no action that could impede or tamper with the unity and the integrity of the federation would be accepted or would be admissible. And I think many have interpreted that to mean that that article meant that the federation was not supposed to be changed. But I don't think that is really what that article meant. The article refers to the unity and the integrity of the federation as a political system, not as a federation as a model of political organization. And besides that, there's the Article 2 of the same Federal Constitution of 1961, which clearly indicated that the people of Cameroon had sovereignty belonged to them, and that with that sovereignty, they could carry out a sovereign decision, which, of course, one of which is a referendum, to make sure that they carry out any constitutional maneuver or any political maneuver in all sovereignty. And I think Article 2 gave the leeway constitutionally for that referendum to take place, and that referendum, therefore, from a constitutional standpoint, given his Article 2 and Article 47, I think it was quite correct. And besides that point, for those who argue over that, we shouldn't forget that that maneuver, that referendum was observed, was followed by the international community, including and in particular the United Nations and the other trusteeship powers, meaning France and Great Britain. And neither the United Nations, nor France, nor Great Britain have ever complained. They have accompanied Cameroon. They have supported Cameroon. And they continue to accompany Cameroon in its evolution. Those who make the argument, it's as if there are those who think that Cameroon, that the 11th of February was to put in place a federal state. No, the 11th February plebiscite was not meant for Cameroon to become a federal state. It was simply a United Nations organized plebiscite to enable British Cameroons, meaning British Northern and Southern Cameroon, to decide whether they will be independent by joining the Republic of Cameroon or by joining the Federal Republic of Nigeria. And of course, we know the result. British Southern Cameroons opted in that plebiscite of 11 February 61 to join their brothers and sisters of the Republic of Cameroon, while British Northern Cameroons opted to join the Federal Republic of Nigeria. And what happened afterward was simply internal domestic politics between the President of the Republic of Cameroon and the political actors in the then British Southern Cameroon. And they were able to strike a deal in Kumban in the summer of 1961, by which they came up with a federal setup, of two federated states. But again, even though they came up with that federal setup, everyone knows by now, and I'm sure historians could not disagree with me, that President Ahijo, who was the federal president, always had as his goal to have Cameroon get to a unitary state, because he believed in a unitary state to be much stronger, much more united, much more united, yes, than a federal state. And he got it by trying 1966 fusion of political parties. And later on, in 1972,
Prof?
he got the referendum by using the very constitution that many people argue over. And I don't see what the argument is all about.
Okay, Prof, we're getting back to you. Thank you, Nkai Abadayan, who is watching. Paul Tabugo, good evening to you. Kennedy Ejaga, the president out there in the United States of America. Glad to know that you are watching the program. Hope you join us in one of this week's edition of Prime Hour to also discuss on this topic. To you, our brother Kennedy Ejacha, SDF out there in the United States of America. Kwetaji Ronald, good evening to you. Jim Tex Kudi, Mark Brandon, Mark Amos Andy, Thomas Quenjum, to you, Nick Notas, Klein McBrown, and to all of you watching us using our social media handle. Now, I want us to understand the maneuver that took place in 1966 that saw political parties actually surrender their powers to the CNU. Did they not see that this was definitely taking them somewhere?
From the onset of the establishment of Cameroon Federation, it was already sure that there is doom in the future. Doom because the constitutional arrangements of 17 to 21st July 1961 at Fumban was simply a French La République du Cameroun constitution that was presented to the delegates of Southern Cameroon for suggestion and comments. And in such an arrangement, a subsequent protest, petition, or action plan that was supposed to anticipate what the Southern Cameroonians were getting into was not done. It was already a sign that we were getting into a trap or into a setup that we are going to face its consequences, which is what is unfolding today. And when you look at the trajectory of 1961 to 72, it is marked by somewhat, I do not see it like a federation. It is somewhat a kind of extensive, decentralized, unitary state that was operating.
You are the Secretary General of Political Party. I want you to tell me about what happened between the politicians of West Cameroon at the time who came.
We are looking at the process that led to the unitary state. I want to give you how Ahidjo conceived Cameroon in his head. Okay. And the role that Southern Cameroonian politicians played in that process. That's what I'm trying to explain here. And I'm saying that Ahidjo had already put it in his head because it is the culture of French countries at independence in that period not to go into federations because they were not familiar with federal forms of governance. Because between 1960 to 80, 90, up to today, you will barely talk of a federal state of a French African country. They are not familiar with that. And then what we need to understand is that the attempt to dissolve or the actual dissolving of the different political parties in Cameroon to form the CNU was a calculated attempt to concentrate power in the hands of Ahidjo so that he would be able to impose what he called federal inspectors. He will be able to dismiss West Cameroon Prime Minister unceremoniously without the due procedure of taking such actions. Those were already political programs that were put in place to suppress the federal structure.
But those are political schemes that were set in place by President Amadou Ahidjo, even at the Fumban conference, if we go by what Professor Elvis Ngole Ngole is saying. But now, he came with a scheme. What was the scheme of the guys from West Cameroon? They were also politicians.
What you need to I want our audience to understand here is that you only have the capacity to take decisions when you have the necessary legal and legitimate power to do so. In a union where the international community have ganged up against a group of people whose power were less, there is this anecdote. Southern Cameroonian delegates at Fumban conference represented 20% of the federal structure that was later formed out of the Fumban conference. And the French Cameroon, already independent, was accompanied by France. But the not yet independent Southern Cameroon was neither accompanied by UK or any other international organization. That is historical facts. And how do you expect people at that young stage of the formation of a republic argue on what they are not sure about because they were moving into an approaching future with uncertainty. And they could only do what they had to do at that point in time. Because blaming the Southern Cameroonian politicians is to say they were two equal states. French Cameroon, Mr. Liu, French Cameroon got its independence already 1st of January 1960. Southern Cameroon's independence was supposed to be. Southern Cameroon had not yet had a president of a republic to go and discuss with another president of the republic where they will be discussing on equal terms. Because Cameroon now, as a republic, irrespective of how small Equatorial Guinea is, the president of Equatorial Guinea is a president who discussed in Pobia with equal terms. But that was not the case at Fuman Conference. Okay. And in the process of the federation, Southern Cameroonian politicians were tied into, let me learn, Mr. Liu.
Okay.
Southern Cameroonian politicians were tied into the hands of a federal president who concentrated powers and had the ability to appoint, dismiss, and rule by presidential decree in a system that was supposed to be characterized by competitive politics, elected federal governors, elected federal assembly presidents, and prime ministers who were supposed to exercise autonomous powers. These autonomous powers were suppressed by inspectors. These autonomous powers were suppressed by ordinances and presidential decrees, which we saw it with the case of Ngomjua and St. Muna. St. Muna was a sympathizer of the federal central government towards the unitary state against Ngomjua, who was a staunch federalist, struggling within his capacity during his period as West Cameroon premier to maintain the structures and the values, principles, and ideals of the federal structure. What happened to him? He was dismissed unceremoniously. That is an example of someone. And Prof talked about something, the 1972 arrangement being constitutional. If the 1961 federal constitution in articles 47.3 stipulate that no bill shall, and the people at that point in time had not yet had equal political leverage, we should not forget the fact that East Cameroon is tolerant to unconstitutional rule and bad governance, unlike West Cameroon that were more politically conscious in terms of carrying out strikes and organizing meetings of holding leaders to be accountable to what they were putting on table for people to debate about their future. Okay. So to say that the 1972 arrangement was constitutional is is a historical misinformation to the people. It was unconstitutional, and it was followed by a 1972 unitary constitution that, for me, I see it as a constitution without consulting people who write constitutions, because it was like a random thought of ideas of politicians struggling to give birth to a new state without appropriate calculation of it.
You are a historian. I want our televiewers to understand how many political parties actually existed in West Cameroon, who were the key actors, how they came into negotiating with Yijo and accepting for the dissolution of their political parties, and what happened after that.
Well, until 1966, former British Southern Cameroon and West Cameroon was buoyant in terms of political pluralism.
Okay.
And in fact, as a matter of fact, there was the enabling atmosphere for people to take a stand other than the official rhetoric, because of the other people who held contrary views to those held by the KNDP, which was the ruling party then at the time. Unfortunately, I should say unfortunately, British Southern Cameroon or West Cameroon found itself in a state where the federal president was, in a way, working against the federal structure. And he was not only working against the federal structure, he was also working to kill political pluralism. And so, because the federal constitution gave him powers, and of course, he even went beyond those powers. When my brother here talked about dismissing the prime minister of former West Cameroon and replacing him in a very, humiliating way, it suggests that the scheme was not only to kill the federation, but also to destroy political opinion, other than those held by the central forces. We should draw the attention of Cameroonians to understand that it is not all package which is given by politicians to be accepted. Because it's true they will project, national interest as the reason for the change or maintenance of certain, decisions. But I think for the most part, in my learning of history, my understanding of constitutionalism, and the game of politics, it suggests that Cameroonians consume a lot without selecting or analyzing the minds of our politicians. And so, when it comes to the issues that preceded the dissolution of the Federation, there was a lot of maneuvering and manipulation. I think Prof himself recognized that there was maneuvering, even though he said that it was legitimate and constitutional. I differed from him. However, Prof is a politician. I'm a historian. I'm not a politician. And so I think that the politicking was informed by motives which were not in line, not in tune with national interest. Prof promptly said that a unity constitution, ensured that the country was more united. But I don't know if the United States is very divided than Cameroon. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. So we have a situation where we. I don't know, perhaps because of the level of education, British Southern Cameroonians, as well as those in the East, accepted the schemes of Ahidjo. But then, if you see the way the federation, you see how the machinations that characterize the election, the campaigns and whatever, the campaign trails, you realize that it was not so much the fault of Cameroonians to have accompanied Ahidjo in the scheme, but it was also because the very president manipulated the polling or the votes. He had the powers and they know how to do that. And of course, even the result that we are hearing, 99.00%, can be questionable.
Okay, can be questionable, but Prof raised the issue of a stronger nation according to President Amadou Ahidjo, that is, if he got a young nation, felt the need to unite the nation so that they can forge ahead. To you, that has no bearing?
Yes, if you look at it from surface, you could fall, you could agree with him. However, but when you go to the, right down to understand, to look at it beyond just what he said, on the surface it was convincing. But if you see the interest that he had, it had to do with consolidating his rule in Cameroon.
And not uniting it.
And not as such, because it has instead created a lot of problems for Cameroon. Okay. It has especially in the context of what we're going through now.
Now, can we see the participation of the population, Cameroonians, West, East, in this whole process? Or it was just an affair of the politicians?
Mr. Leo, when we go back to look at the plebiscite, in 1961, you realize that there were campaigns to actually educate the people on what they should be voting for. And if we can recall, the MDLAs, they went round the territory of Southern Cameroons doing their best to campaign and bring in Cameroonians to their side. Poncha did the same. And when on the 11th of February 1961, when the Southern Cameroonians went to the poll to vote for that plebiscite, they knew what they were going to do. And since during that campaign, the presentation that was given to them was that they are going to join the French Cameroon under a federation that would permit them to run their issues. They were all willing to go vote. So that was the excitement that led to their voting. But when it came to the so-called unilateral abrogation of the 1961 Constitution in 1972, there was a scheme that was set up. And this particular scheme resulted to the dissolution of an internationally accepted political entity. It was dissolved and brought down, or let me use the word, further annexed and brought to create a province under an equal, let me use it, territory, state. That particular act of 1972 was not with the people. Why do I say the people were not involved? Aïdjo cannot travel to France, then enter Cameroon.
Yep, that,
Then, Mr. Leo, please.
Yeah, please. I want us to be very, present your facts.
I am presenting facts.
But to talk about annexation, Prime takes exception to that.
Yes,
just
well, that is a position I just presented. When I say what I said, when you look at the steps that led to that particular so-called referendum that took place in 1972, Mr. Aïdjo was out of Cameroon. He had traveled to France. When he came in, he had to call his parliamentarians. He called the parliamentarians, and the next day, this issue was tabled in the National Assembly. And before we discovered, an election was imposed. And this time, it was no more the Southern Cameroonians who were, or maybe the Western Cameroonians who were now consulted. It became a national issue. Because I think that when we wanted to join this union, it was the people of Southern Cameroon that made the choice. And they were supposed to give them the choice again to choose whether to dissolve the entire federation or not. But they were not consulted. They were imposed. Something which they never bought into. And I will be sincere in saying this, Mr. Leo. That is why if you look today, we have a problem where cultural issues have been brought down to linguistic issues. For example, we have a bilingual country as it is presented instead of a bicultural country in relation to the fact that we speak English and French as the main borrowed languages from our colonial masters.
What do you understand? What do you mean by bicultural country?
Yes, Cameroon is not a bilingual country, it's a bicultural country. Linguistic comes from a culture. It's an extract. So we can't...
So Cameroon is not a multicultural country?
When we talk of multicultural, we understand where you are coming from. But I am talking from a colonial perspective. From a colonial perspective, Cameroon is a bicultural country,
okay,
not a bilingual country.
Okay.
And so if we speak English and French, we should not forget that Cameroon has two subsystems. And these two subsystems have different values when you put them in place. And so struggling to merge them and make them work, that is the reason why at the end of the day today you see socio-professional problems that we have, where it is true we enjoy the English subculture from home up to universities, but when we leave universities and we are going to jobs, it becomes a problem. You can't fit in the system because you must be francophonized before you can have a job. And that is where we have a problem in Cameroon. And when I heard Professor Ngole Ngole saying that it was a legal move to dissolve the constitution, I feel that's deception. I feel you are deceiving Cameroonians, because in reality, it was an abrogation of a constitution which permits us. He quoted a clause of that constitution. That is Article 47, which literally makes us to understand that no bill that dares to tamper with the unity, with the federal structure should be accepted. And if that was the case, The question is, how then do you come back and say it was something that was legal? Okay, you claim that the people, yes, the constitution permits that the people should decide. In this question, in this state, where the people consulted, votes, you place a vote like we have seen, you have a vote of we and yes. How do you expect that there should be any possibility of not voting, of not winning?
No, Prof says this was done under the... Yes, if you can, just come in, Prof.
Yes, with your permission, you know, when I listen to Dr. Efim and Professor Kumbam and Mr. Lena, what I enjoy about this debate or this discussion or this conversation is that, you know, all the four of us are Cameroonians, and I don't doubt that there's any one of us who is not, who thinks like he is anything but Cameroonian. So it's good that we are talking as Cameroonians. And as Cameroonians, I think that the minimum we should have is that, yes, we may not have the same way of thinking or the same way of reasoning or the same thoughts about how we can move forward. At least the minimum is that, look, we are talking amongst ourselves, but we are also talking to our fellow Cameroonians. We have no reason to try to lie to or to cheat or outsmart our fellow Cameroonians, because we care about our fellow Cameroonians, because we ourselves are Look, in 1961, or by 1961, by the plebiscite time of 11 February 1961, two things were clear. One was that the international community, and that includes the United Nations and the constitutive powers of France and Britain, they were willing, and their goal was to get British Cameroon to join either their brothers of the sovereign state of the Republic of Cameroon or the sovereign state of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. The international community, including the United Nations, was not for British Cameroon, making the North and South being a sovereign state on its own. That is the historical fact, and I'm sure historians have said it again and again. Second consideration is that we shouldn't lose sight of the fact that President Ahidjo, who was our first president and the federal president at that time, was cautious. He had enough experts, he had enough collaborators, he had enough counselors to know that long before 1961, Cameroonians from across the two sides of the Moko, who were in Nigeria, who were in France, who were in Britain or in Europe, longed for that day when they will reunite as one Cameroon. This is also recorded. All you have to do is read the history books and you'll get what I'm saying. And now, when I say that this President Ahidjo was right and the move he made in 1972 with the referendum was constitutional, was legitimate, and was legal, this is what I'm talking about. President Ahidjo was conscious that Cameroonians wanted to unite or unite. They didn't want to be divided. And when the referendum, the plebiscite results came up in 1961, 11 February, well, we all know that Cameroon was not happy that British Northern Cameroon opted to join the Federal Republic of Nigeria, while British Southern Cameroon opted to join their brothers of the Republic of Cameroon. But because we are friendly and we are fraternal with our neighbor and sister or brotherly nation of Nigeria, I think Cameroon decided to come over and to forget and to allow that to pass. And today we are best friends with Nigeria. But still we are talking about Cameroon. Now that we are talking as Cameroonians, let us be humble and honest enough to tell each other that For you to say, as I've heard Professor Kumbom say earlier, that the 1972 referendum was a so-called, and that the 1972 referendum was not an act with the people, because according to him, Southern Cameroonians were supposed to be consulted apart. I think that it is only commonsensical and logical to know that after the federal state came into being from 1st of October 1961, we were one nation. We were no more two states apart. In fact, British Southern Cameroon was not a state, as you know, but the Republic of Cameroon was a sovereign state existing by 1961. And so, as one state, as one federal state, after 1st of October 1961, any political act internally, domestically, was to be seen an act by one nation, undivided. And so the referendum of 1972 was not supposed to be a referendum to refer only to one part of the Cameroon. No, the referendum was referred to the entire federal state of Cameroon, made up of two federated states. And that's what happened. And beyond that, we shouldn't forget that when the results came out, the results from the federated state of West Cameroon were very clearly 99.9% in favor of the unitary system, just like the results of from the federated state of East Cameroon. So, whether you consulted or not, first the consultations took place because there were campaigns. Secondly, the results showed that the federated state of West Cameroon voted overwhelmingly in favor of a unitary system. And that's why I'm saying that was legitimate. You cannot refer to a referendum, at least as a political scientist. A referendum can never be referred to as a so-called, because you know that in political science theory, the referendum is the highest form of sovereign expression by a people. There's nothing higher than a referendum. Once a people have gone into a referendum, that means that is the highest exercise of their sovereignty. And nothing is higher than that. And guess what? The United Nations and the two former trusteeship authorities accepted this and accepted and have continued to follow Cameroon and accompany and support Cameroon in this path to the unitary system. Now, those who don't agree, who may not agree with the unitary system, are free to do so, but know that if you don't agree to what the people have said through a referendum, which is a kind of vote, a sovereign popular vote, you have to, through the same means, democratic, sovereign, find a way to get an alternative. But so far, I think that many Cameroonians continue to support the fact that we are moving towards a stronger union. The union is getting stronger, even if we have challenges, and I agree that there are challenges. Even if we have problems, I agree that there are problems. But that does not in any way put in peril. That does not in any way belittle the fact that we have succeeded in forging a state on a unitary model of organization. And all that we have to do as honest Cameroonian, patriotic Cameroonian, is to work hard in order to make that union more perfect. We are not perfectly, and our founding fathers and those who preceded us as political actors, they were not perfect either. But among those who appreciate the past,
okay,
I appreciate history.
Prof,
I appreciate those who were to be. And I think that we learn a lot from history.
Okay, Prof.
We should not make as if they were wrong, because they were not wrong.
Okay, Prof. We'll be getting back.
We are moving on the way of a stronger and stronger union, and let us try to make it a more perfect union.
Okay, thank you, Prof. We'll be getting back to you. Fabrice Lena, you got the Prof. He came back to.
If I could just add that I heard Professor Kumbong say that in the 1972 referendum, there was only a we yes. That is so wrong and so false. In the 1972 referendum, there was a white ballot paper of we yes, and there was a black ballot paper of no and we, no and no. So for anyone who says that there was only a ballot paper of we yes, that's false, that is wrong, that is propaganda. In fact, that is fake, because everyone knows, the United Nations knows, France knows, Britain knows that there were two ballot papers, one white with a yes and we, and the other black with a no and no. I mean, this is clear. I'm not the one saying it, because this is in New York, in Paris, and in London.
Okay. This professor is raising an issue that this referendum was also monitored. We had the observation of the United Nations. And also we have Britain and France that observed that and have worked with Cameroon this far without raising the issue of the constitutionality of this referendum that some persons agree, buy into, and others still question it today. But what was the role that politicians played at the time, especially Anglophone politicians? Were they so helpless? They just observed because constitutionally President Amadou Ahidjo had a sweeping pass?
I want us to look at the context of 1972 again. It is a context of one-party system. That's what I even wanted to ask the prof, because when he talks of there was campaign, there were mobilization, of how many political parties? Because there was no other political opinion apart from what the CNU was telling Cameroonians. Cameroonians were not receiving any other political ideology, doctrine, contrary view of what the CNU was presenting, because the agenda of a referendum to suppress the federation was the agenda of the CNU, the single political party created in 1966. So in the context where there is no other political party, there is no other contrary view, there is no other, there's no competitive politics, nobody, in the plebiscite, we were talking of different political parties. Yes, Ndele in southern Cameroon and Foncha, they were having two different political parties carrying out campaign on two different ideologies and platforms. And it was competitive. People were going to listen to what Ndele was saying and what Foncha was saying. And at the end, they had to choose between two different ideologies and program of two different political parties. But here we are talking about a single political party under the leadership of a federal president who has concentrated all power in his hands. The people were just there to succumb. It was just like a military dictatorship where everything was just imposed. And the parliament, the parliament was just at the mercy of the executive power, who comes and gives a bill and the bill goes through. So we cannot observe that what we are experiencing in Cameroon today is rooted in history. So the politicians, like you said, Mr. Liu, they had no objection because they all belong to a single political party at that time. They did not have a contrary, because even if you had a contrary political opinion, you will be persecuted, because those who were against the forming of the one-party system in 1966 were persecuted. Either they were imprisoned, or they were sent to exile, or they were executed. So contrary opinions were not even accepted. There was no political tolerance. It was not in the context of multi-party politics. And that's why we question the legality and legitimacy of such a referendum. Because if a referendum is not reflecting the aspirations of a people, that is going to put the so-called unity and the so-called, what they call the strong bond of the country in peril in the long run, then there is need, absolute need, to revisit such a referendum in the context of a multi-party politics system. Because 1972 and the present day of Cameroon are two different political contexts. But now, since the CNU was transformed to the present day, the CPDF that's running the country, we see that the tendencies of Amadou Ahidjo's way of running the government with appointees carrying out all government actions is what is prevailing today. So Prof cannot come here and tell us that we should accept that the 1972 referendum was legal and it was legitimate. And also, if he says that the yes or we was not the only question given to Cameroonians at that time, let him prove to us also the black or the other document he was saying that was containing no and no. Because archives are only proving to us, the younger generation, a yes or we paper. Where is the other paper that was stipulating none and no? We want to see it. Maybe, Prof, in the CBDM Academy that you direct, such an archive is there. We would like to see and know, because like you rightly said, Cameroonians need to know what is right and the truth of the trajectory of their country. Because what is called National Youth Day to me and the 20th May is a complete unconstitutional and illegal national day that we are celebrating. If we were supposed to celebrate a national day in Cameroon, Mr. Liu, my fellow panelists and Cameroonians, it is supposed to be the 1st of October. Why 1st of October? The reunification plan was supposed to be matured on the 1st of October. Since the 1st of October was supposed to be the independence date of the people of Southern Cameroon, and such an independence was by joining the Republic of Cameroon, which is preceded by the plebiscite that they voted in majority by what history presents to join such a people. Now, in the Federal Republic, if they had to say, let's celebrate national days, if the plebiscite day of 11 February is to be celebrated, it's not what is being presented to us today as Youth Day, because I don't know where the context of Youth Day is coming from, which do not reflect the action and activity that took place on the 11th of February 1961. So you see that the maneuver and manipulative plan of the federal government had already shown the bleak political future of this country from the onset. Because you cannot take a date like 11th of February with its seriousness and you give a Youth Day. And then you come to 20th May, where a constitution was abrogated illegally, and make it a national day. And an important date where part of the people who in such a union obtained their own autonomy by becoming part of you is being neglected, suppressed, and only being recalled by the tendency of the nationhood of such a people with a particular colonial heritage. So that is where the question lies. And I want to ask Prof. Prof, you say that we are moving forward and in the stronger unity. Is Cameroon actually united today when we look at the circumstances and socio-political conditions of our country? Are we really united? Because unity should not be such that it is a word written in documents and acts of propaganda being said in political ceremonies. We are talking about what we call living together. Are we actually living together in this country as of the context of the country now? Because the challenges we are having are not nominal challenges that countries have. No, we are talking about tendencies of restoring either a statehood or a former governance system. So such tendencies is not just simple challenges. Those are challenges that has to do with question of referendum, question of amendment of the constitution, question of the existence of a people, question of the bicultural nature of a country, like Prof. Mark said. So I would really like Prof to clarify on such these things, because as a senior political scientist in this country and as an aspiring young politician that I am, I would want to have the facts as it is, not to misinform Cameroonians. Let Cameroonians know what is right, so that we can rewrite the history of this country rightly again.
Okay. Can we say that the game was done? No. Just take note, Prof. You come after Doctor. Yes, Doctor. Can we say here now that the process was cooked and everything was done with the creation of the CNU, because we had almost no opposition within the context of the nation as it existed at the time, and almost everything that came from either the party or the state sailed through.
Yes. First, Mr. Leo, I would like to make Prof to understand that we are speaking as patriotic Cameroonians. We might differ in opinions. We are Cameroonians, but we have to express what we think in relation to the truth, to the facts as they happened. We are patriotic and honest to engage in this kind of debate, which is healthy, because we find ourselves at a time when Cameroon is facing an existentialist threat. And you cannot undermine the contribution of the failures of the actions that were taken in the past to this present situation. And as such, if we are looking at the past, we should be honest to say that something went wrong here.
Okay.
As an attempt to address the issues. We want to build this country. It should be solid. It should be stronger. We should have a country where ideas, there is pluralism. Now, talking about the question you asked about whether it was...
No, once the CNU was created,
yes.
Was it the final, the final nail?
The creation of the CNU.
Yes, because we did not have a rival opinion.
Yes, the creation of the CNU was the beginning of the decline of this nation. The nation would have been more vibrant. The nation would have had a possibility of questioning its leadership. I mean, how do you question the doings of a government without an opposition party? That was the beginning of the destruction of Cameroon. And I think that we are still being haunted by that specter.
Okay.
In that, even within the current political pluralism, it appears there is a tendency to silence the opposition. And I cannot fail to say that it was a national disaster, the creation of the CNU.
Okay, it was a...
to say the least. I don't want to steal the show.
It was a national disaster, but was it not also, because at the time the politicians were not as experienced, and yes, at the time.
Let me tell you something. In politics, you make mistakes. Even with the lack of maturity among politicians in Cameroon, on both sides, but there was a possibility of learning on the job.
Okay.
There is no perfect democracy. And as such, we would have allowed the system to triumph as it was, as designed, based on the 1961 Federal Constitution. And then we see where we have weaknesses and try to rebuild. You understand what I'm saying? To say that the state is spending so much money, to say that we need a more perfect union within a united state, those are schemes that were meant to obscure the real intentions of the architect of the destruction of the federal system.
Okay. Yes, some persons say that, good evening, Mr. Liu. We are living together but not eating together. I'm really enjoying the program. Pauline Ito is writing from Mato. Yeah, can we say that, okay, even if there was a unitary form of the state that was aimed at consolidating our unity, and that the economy, that is development, actually followed, we would not be saying what we're saying today.
Mr. Liu, that's why I mentioned before I ended that the truth behind this issue is that after the abrogation of that constitution, the problem that came up that has made visible other problems is that of the social professional aspect. Why? If the people were given free access to their jobs, they were made to feel free in the system, you will never hear of maybe marginalization and all that. But the fact that individuals, before they access a job, they need to be francophonized before they get a job, became a serious problem. Where before you go to queues, there was only queues in those days. It's just of recent that we have other universities set up in Boya and in Bamenda. Before you go to queues, it is practically a French system. And at the end of the day, I've heard some ministers and some individuals who went on TV to say that Anglophones are not capable of passing professional exams. Why? Because you want them to be Francophones to write an exam which they never studied under that system. And so that particular issue created a social professional problem which went further to expose the other problems which were measured. And you see, The worst part of it is that a people had been reduced to a minority. We have a social cultural group of individuals with a political entity, which is a political entity with a political identity, which has been reduced into a group, or let's say a minority in the entire state, reduced into provinces or say regions in a country. That already creates a serious problem. And so in relation to my perspective, I will say this, and I will say it without mixing words, Mr. Liu, that Cameroon needs a federation in order to excel. If we keep on with these unity states, it already has shown us a lot of faults. We have attained a level where it is practically difficult to live together. Yes, we will say living together is not really a problem, but eating together is the real problem, because what people I will say this we have a serious economic problem, Mr. Liu, in Cameroon, where the majority, I will tell you this, the southern, say the west, former West Cameroon, and presently the northwest and the southwest, which is the English part of the Cameroon, has just 20% population. In fact, it makes 20% out of the entire population. And just imagine, today, we were talking about, that's why I came to say bilingualism and cultural issues. Today we have the same Francophones who have sent their children to do English education. Now there's nothing that you can gain when they cannot gain. So even the English stuff that you wanted to get, they'll pick it up. And so that becomes a serious issue for the people of the former Western Cameroon. And so I think that if we have to readjust, we should not forget the problem of Cameroon is a constitutional problem. It is not it's a constitutional structural problem. If we keep on playing around, making it a minority, until here professors say the unity state is the best. It's never the best. It's the best for him, but it's never the best for Cameroonians. Cameroonians are suffering as we are talking right now. The reason why we have we have a serious economic problem in Cameroon right now is simply because we took a wrong decision at a time when we were supposed to be working towards the betterment of our country. Aijo went ahead to dissolve a constitution, created a unitary state which was not working, because he wanted to consolidate power on himself and to be the dictator of the time. And he dictated. And look at it. Where are we today? We are in a mess, and a serious mess. And so we need to be able to say it. I love Cameroon more than maybe some of you think you love. I believe that if Cameroon must progress, we should be able to also speak the truth, so that those who are listening should understand that we are not out to destroy but to build.
Okay. We are not out to destroy but to build. Professor, you wanted to come in. I'm sure you've listened to some of the things said by Fabrice Lena. And you wanted to yeah.
Yes, I'll start from where Professor Kumbo left off. And say that he loves Cameroon more than some of us. I would disagree with him on that, because when I hear him speak, he doesn't sound like someone who can justify loving Cameroon more than I do, because all that he sees is, to use his own words, a mess. Nothing is working according to him. I don't see anybody who loves Cameroon and display such a lack of faith, or lack of belief, or lack of fidelity in the system, and yet you claim that you love it more than others. You are free to express your views anyway. With respect to Mr. Lena's point that I should show which archives or which books show that there were two ballot papers, one white which carried a we and yes, and the other black which carried a no and a no. I think all I will refer you to, Mr. Lena, is to read the historical books written by Professor Julian Law, to go to the United Nations Archives in New York, to go to the Library of Congress in Washington, or any of the libraries in London and in Paris. And I'm sure this is not, you're not going to learn this from me. These are already documented facts. So I will welcome that you consult those sources and you get to what I'm saying, that there were 2 ballot papers, one white, which carried a we and a yes, and
Okay. We have technical issues. We've lost Professor Victor. No. Ngole Ngole. Yes, I mentioned Victor Ngole because he was referring you to one of his books and also to.
1st of October would be preferable as a national day to 20th of May. There is someone who doesn't understand how political societies are organized. I think that a unity state is a stronger form of union than a federal state. And that is why many federal states, unity states are
unjustified.
Issues with today. Okay, we'll be coming back to Prof there. Doctor, now what can we see are the lessons that might have been learned from what happened in 1972, how the politicians gave away the surrender to the creation of the CNU, and today we where we are. Have you seen our politicians of today as having learned from what happened in the past?
I'm afraid I would say that they haven't learned.
Okay.
Because for the most part, they still accompany the system.
Okay.
Either deliberately or unconsciously. Why am I saying this? When you have a political system that have lived for decades, and you look at the conditions of life of Cameroonians, they are degrading. And then you, as an opposition party, you can't flush this system out and relieve Cameroonians from the pressure, financial difficulties, economic difficulties. I mean, even the very concept of vivant sound, it's not. It's just a rhetoric. Now, and you can't, you can't push. I mean, you can't replace the system that is responsible for the mess. It means that the politicians haven't learned from the past. And the lessons, did you talk about lessons?
Yes.
The lessons are this. I think I'll address those lessons to Cameroonians, because we are the one, facing the negative, the negative aspects of all of this. Cameroonians should understand that this country belongs to Cameroonians, to them. And no single group of people are more Cameroonian. And as such, they should take the bull by the horns to understand that with numbers, we can turn things around. It is true, we understand the political context and the way elections are organized in Cameroon, but with numbers, they can do things. Because it is a historic mission to address the ills of this country. That will be part of the contribution to the fatherland. The founding fathers, let me call them founding fathers, they have done their own. Generations have passed. There is a generation. What are we going to leave behind as a contribution to the fatherland? Is to understand the pitfalls of nation building from the very beginning. Is to understand what needs to be done. We need to rethink our institutions. We live in a situation where you have strong personalities and weak institutions. And so within the context of weak institutions and strong persons, somebody can put across his personal interest at the expense of national interest and drags you to the mud and drags the people to the mud. We should understand that other nations have gone through what we are going through. But at one moment, some people need to stand above the crowd and try to direct concerns towards, undoing the harm, both politically, economically, socially, so that we can begin to think of having a Moses that delivers people from a state of mess, from a state of decadence, from a state where there is almost no future. I'm not saying that everything is bad, but we can do better as a people. We can do better as a country. God has given this country so much. I mean, the human resources are there. The natural resources are there. We just need to see how we can, combine the strength from the north, east, south, west, and center, so that we can drive Cameroon towards emergence. I mean, real emergence, not rhetoric.
Okay, not rhetoric. I want us to, because whatever happened in 1972 was political, done by politicians, accompanied by other politicians. Do you have the impression today that there is a clear weight that could withstood what we expected others to do to Ahidjo today when you look at the political setup now?
It is rather unfortunate, Mr. Leo, that today what we call the opposition seems to be more divided than should be. Because I will be sincere in saying that at times what we call opposition parties in Cameroon is just a name. There are just few political parties, opposition parties in Cameroon. The rest are just indeed political parties, but not opposition parties. So we expect that let these politicians with their political parties, in order to have the weight possible to outdo the present regime through a ballot box, there is need for them to create a force that will be able to pull Cameroonians behind them and permit Cameroonians to go prove the fact that the system in place is practically having a problem. And from what I'm seeing, Mr. Leo, I will be sincere in telling you that it seems like an impossibility to pull the weight of Cameroonians behind a particular political party right now. Since most of them have actually been playing the same game that happened in the 1960s, practically just accompanying the ruling party. And as a result of that, we do not have a serious political opposition parties that can pull that weight. But I pray that before 2025, something should have happened that will permit these parties to get to a place where, these politicians and political parties to get to a place where they can keep their ego aside and create a force that will permit them to change history and to rewrite history. And as a result of that, I will be glad that in my days, something happened that will make young Cameroonians in the future to celebrate our time. Because at this particular moment, with all the talking we are talking because of the failures of the past. But talking without having the capability and possibility to correct the past is where there is a problem. And so we need to be able to start creating the opportunities or making the opportunities available to change that history that we had in the past. And that I'm happy that we have young politicians like Lena, who is here, with a different mindset, with a different drive. That to me is very important.
Okay.
I wish more young Cameroonians can join him and let us be able to see them move forward and bring the change that we need.
Fabrice Lena, we seemingly are looking at the politicians of old as having failed. Did they really fail? Should we not also look at where we can celebrate them? Because whether we like it or not, they lay the foundations of this nation. Nobody's celebrating. Nobody's celebrating that.
Yeah. Like, let me be honest with you. when I read through the history of this country from pre-colonial, colonial to post-colonial, all I can see is opportunities that have been missed, chances of making the country better that have been lost, both internally and externally. And to me, to say that let me start enumerating issues of successes is like trying to squeeze water out of stone, sincerely. Because if our generation is suffering what is suffering today, is because that generation failed to do what they ought to do. And I think I will agree to a certain extent with Prof and Professor here, Doctor here, that the present context is still repeating the very historical blunders and errors of the 60s, of the 72s, of the 90s. Now, what ought we do now at this point in time? Because for me...
So you're accepting that you as opposition are failing?
No, I did not say... I said to a certain extent of the present context. I did not say that the allegations of opposition failing is a right perspective to go. Because what we need to understand, and Cameroonians need to know, is that the present president of the Republic, Paul Biya, was at the presidency from 1960s to 1972, when these present arrangements of the unity state was created. And just immediately after the unity state was created, he was promoted to the prime minister when the prime minister post was created in 1975. And the constitution was modified to change the constitutional right of the interim from the president of the assembly to the prime minister, because they doubted the probability of the interim shifting to an Anglophone. You see. And in 1979, the same modification was made again when the person holding that potential post of an interim was an Anglophone. And when he came to power, President Paul Biya came to power in 1984 by a simple presidential decree, ordinance, changed the unity state of the country again. And you see, it all coalesced to this subject of being annexed or marginalized, subjugated, that led to the new social order document of Fongoji Dinka, who said this is permanent annexation, and it led to the 1990s and all what unfolded. So we should not forget that CPDM, which is the party in power now, is a transformation of CNU. Mr. Liu, how do you expect a party that has been in power for because we will say CPDM has been in power since 1985.
Are you saying
but it is a simple transformation of a one-party system to because CPDM first of all functioned as a one party before multipartism. So it is difficult. A party that its origin was state machination, that way you could not distinguish, and you cannot distinguish between state apparatus, state officials, and party partisans, party politicians. And that is why opposition have it very difficult to combat this particular political party. This is rooted in the 1990 multi-party foundations. It was weak. It was weak. And when the syndicates of opposition parties, civil society came together in a tripartite conference, it was just like the national dialogue we have today with pre-prepared agenda that was aimed at giving to the people the minimum that they want, in order that the state could still control them in whatever way. We can also neglect the long-term divide and rule among Cameroonians. Because when Prof and Doctor is talking about the inability of people to come together, divide and rule has been for long. And divide and rule succeeds in the society where there is people are famished, people are hungry, there is inequality, there is unemployment. When the society is characterized by these ills, divide and rule become easy. Because the person who sees that he's struggling, putting a lot of energy into seeing success of something, is not accompanied by the very people he's fighting for, sits into whatever opportunity that is given to that person and stays quiet. Okay. And that is the nature of our society. But we are saying that at this point in time, all hope is not yet lost. I would first of all implore that let our professor and doctor, being the state people that they are, join us in the political field. Because if you are talking from the point of view of a Pan-Africanist or a lecturer in a university without joining a vibrant political party, because you have a huge following in Cameroon. Doctor also have a huge university following. But I'm afraid that, you know, since the unitary state function in such a way that state universities and most private universities are functioning under ministerial departments, and appointments or opportunities are coming in that magnitude, it is very difficult sometimes for our university dons to be active politicians. But I am calling on them that they should join us. I decided as a young person to do politics because I feel that the only thing, no matter what we say, it is the political will. When the political will is not there, no problem can ever be solved. The political will to solve problem is not there. So the first thing that can make us to come out of this quagmire in Cameroon is the departure of the regime in power. That is the basis of the foundation of this country.
I have just been told that Prof is not yet on. Prof, please, I really have one last question for you, if you can connect back, so that I put this question through to you. I'll be very, very happy. Doctor, you came all the way from Boya to be part of this edition of Prime Hour to tell Cameroonians how we moved towards where we are today in unitary form. Prof, we hear you are there. Can you just land with what you had to say before I put the question through?
Yes, as before we got cut, what I was going to say was that for anyone to propose that 1st of October would have been a better date for a national day than 20th of May doesn't quite consider the fact that 1st of October was the advent of a federal state, and 20th of May was the advent of the unitary state. And in political science, a unitary state is a stronger form of union than a federal state. This is why many more countries in the world, the greater majority of the countries of 193 countries that make up the United Nations, are unitary states rather than federal states. Altogether, there are not up to 50 federal states in the world, but there are over 145 to 147 unitary states in the world. And so it was only commonsensical, it was only logical that between those 2 days, the powers that be will choose 20th of May as our national day rather than 1st of October. Besides, we shouldn't forget that 1st of October is the national day of another country which is dear to us. You know this and you can check. Now I was going to respond to the question raised by Mr. Lena with regard to how united we are. He asked a question, hopefully rhetorical, are we really united? Of course, Mr. Lena, we are united in reality. We are united spiritually. We are united emotionally. That does not mean that unity means there are no problems or there are no challenges. But the problems and the challenges we've got are less than the power of union, than the spirit of union. And so our founding fathers were right, and President Biya, who is the incarnation and the guarantor of the unity of Cameroon, is right. And if you doubt, let me give you some indicators and some facts about the success of our union as a unity state. 1, our national sovereignty is intact. 2, our national borders are intact. 3, all of us, no matter what, with the exception of a few, are attached to the symbols of our state. All of us are attached to our institutions, and our national identity as a nation is still there. Proof is that all of us in this panel, we identify ourselves as Cameroonians. Also, there is also our image abroad. all the countries in the world, including the United Nations and our former trusteeship authorities, continue to consider Cameroon as a successful case of national unity. And we should be thankful to the fact that we were able to move from a federal state because of its weaknesses and because of its limitations to a unitary form of state. There is nothing wrong with that. This is an evolution. And as patriotic Cameroonians, we should understand that together as a unitary state, we have achieved a lot. We have achieved a lot as a nation under the unitary form of state model than we did for the 11 years that we were a federal state. We have 50 years and not 50 days. We have gone through this for 50 years, and we should be able to be proud and be honest enough to say 50 years of a unitary state have done better than 11 years of a federation. And there have been so many other achievements that we have achieved, which in the material area, I mean, if you look at all the progress that we've made in infrastructure, in the educational system, in the health system, in the social system, I mean, you can name it, in the communication system. We have done very well as a unitary state. Prof, and we should be proud of that.
Prof, let me just put
But we should continue working on the challenges and the problem.
Prof,
yes.
Yeah, I want us to get to where we are today. We are a unitary decentralized state. After the major national dialogue, we have what we all know as the special status for the Northwest and Southwest region. You think we are on the right path with that?
Yes, we're on the right path because we gave ourselves the opportunity to participate. Don't forget that 60% of the participants at the Grand National Dialogue were from the Northwest and Southwest. And out of that 4 or 5 day discussion, there were tremendous recommendations. And among these recommendations were that decentralization should be accelerated, and you know it has been accelerated, and that there should be a special status for the Northwest and Southwest. We have to be proud of these achievements. We shouldn't look like we are people suffering from an inferiority complex or some sort of ignorance. I think that we've come a long way. Lots of people, and we should be able to be thankful to the founding fathers for what they were able to do. Be thankful, be able to appreciate parts of the government, and we as citizens should say we are ready, out of patriotism, out of fidelity, out of loyalty, to do what we have, to move our country forward. What the movement.
Okay, thank you very much, Prof. Now, we are going to be drawing the curtains for this edition of the program in 5 minutes at time. I'll just give us 1 minute for one last word. Starting with you, Doctor. Yes, certainly you have one last word to tell our televiewers as we look forward to the celebration of the National Day on the 20th of May, which is on Friday.
Well, until now, 20th of May is the National Day officially. And so we have to celebrate the day while bearing in mind that we have to make a retrospect as to where we came from, as to the challenges, as to the way forward.
Okay.
And
no, go on.
And talking about it, the way forward, it's trying to reconcile Cameroonians. That day should be a day where Cameroonians who have drifted apart, based on opinions with respect to their positions on the existence of the nation and their ideas about the nation, should be encouraged to sit together and express their minds with the hope of coming up with a consensus as to what represents the interests of Cameroon. The interest of Cameroon until now, I want to say, is defined within circles which in my opinion, don't touch a common man directly. It is that reflection on the way forward that will move us towards paths which are desirable.
Okay. Akubo, Prof.
Mr. Leo, having listened to Professor Ngole, I've gotten a little bit so disturbed because I feel like he fails to realize the impact of this particular unity state upon the West Cameroon. West Cameroon, before the abrogation of the 1961 Constitution in 1972, had airports, which at present, as we are talking, do not have any. We had the power camp, which today we don't have any. We had, in fact, the Western Cameroon was in a progressive move. Most of these things were dissolved. And the people of West Cameroon are suffering. And you claim over national TV that we have made progress. That progress is directly related straight to Professor Ngole Ngole, and to sit before the TV and make praises of his political party is, I think that to him is what he called patriotism. But patriotism means you love your country. And lying about the issues of your country makes you unpatriotic. I'll be sincere in saying this. We cannot keep holding a system that is failing and expect to make progress. If we have to look at from 1982 till present date, 1982 being from the day that Mr. Biya took power till today, you will see how Cameroon has been going down, not climbing. We should keep the infrastructural developments that we are claiming, which all is borrowed money. Cameroonians are more indebted than they will ever be. Our children's children are indebted. And we are talking of progress. We don't use borrowed money to build our country. We should create our own factories. Where are the factories we used to have? We used to have in Cameroon factories to produce tomato. Where are they? They have all been closed. We import rice when we have rice producing areas in Cameroon. Is that progress? Cameroonians are literally suffering from hunger when we have the capacity to industrialize our agricultural system. Do we have that capacity? Why are we not doing it? Okay. That's proof of failure.
Okay, you don't look hungry yourself.
I am not talking for myself. I'm talking for Cameroonians.
All right, Mr. Leo, when I listen to Prof, I feel that Prof is saying we Cameroonians are suffering from inferiority complex, whereas Prof, I think he's suffering from inferiority complex. Because I don't get it that you, a professor of political sciences, which doing political science means you're vying to be a leader, a political leader, and that's why he joined the CPDM political party. And I am surprised and bemused that he's comfortable praising a single man who has been in power for the past 40 years. It means he himself is an inferior political leader who do not even want to lead. Because leading means that you should have gone to the CPDM to prepare yourself to become the president of Cameroon as well. And we're expecting that you exercise that by campaigning and preparing to be the next president within a political party that has competitive politics. But since the party is designed to praise one single individual ad infinitum, Prof is suffering from that inferiority complex of a political party where they are all there to save the interests of a single person. I am, to conclude, Mr. Leo, I want to tell Cameroonians that we are in the perspective of looking at the future of Cameroon with the federalist perspective, West Cameroon problem and its solution. We will encourage people to get a copy of this document and read it. It's really rich. It's a document I contributed to its realization, and it's written by Professor Ben Aki, who is also critical of the government. And I think that at this point in time, we all need to rise up and let's join a political party. We should stop criticizing political parties that have failed. We should join them. We should join them and take action and stop criticizing. And we thank those who are encouraging us in the landscape of a difficult political terrain, and we keep on growing and seeing how Cameroon will look like. Cameroon is after Paul Biya. It is after CPDM. It's no more with CPDM. Let's move forward.
We came to discuss history. Please keep your politics out of this. That time is going to come where you campaign to take President Biya out of. But we want to say thank you to you, Professor Elvis Ngole Ngole, for giving us your time this evening to be part of the panel to discuss this very, very important topic. It is the first for the week. Wednesday, we're also going to do part 2 of this program. Hopefully, we're going to have Dr. Ako and Paul Sulambi, Valentine Ngwa, and Eric Achinji as panelists for that day, as well as Gentle, a history teacher. We say thank you to you for coming.
Thank you very much, Mr. Leo, for the opportunity. It's my pleasure. Always been around.
Okay. Thank you for coming.
Mr. Leo, thank you very much. I'm grateful for this platform to, send the minds and ideas of a historian. And to say that I'm very overwhelmed with the way you moderated. And you can count on me whenever you call for me to come and share in the platform. I want to thank my co-panelists and to say that it's a singular pleasure for me to have interacted with you for the first time in this platform.
Okay. Thank you to both for coming.
Thank you, Mr. Liu. I want to say the Popular Action Party do not recognize 20th May as National Day in Cameroon, and therefore we will not be taking part in its celebrations.
No, please, Fabrice, sincerely, don't use this platform to sincerely.
I understand you say.
Yes.
It's okay.
We are a television that is regulated by the laws of the land. The 20th May is constitutional for now. You cannot use my platform to say what no. Please, write that and send it out. Don't use the platform to pass that out. We want to thank everybody who took time off to watch this edition of the program. Stay blessed. Bye-bye.
C'est l'histoire de 4 jeunes femmes ressortissantes des régions différentes et amies depuis l'enfance. Elles vont traverser une période tourbillonnante de leur vie.
Tu es en train de me demander de coucher avec lui?
Et ne vont pouvoir compter que les unes sur les autres pour surmonter leurs difficultés.
Qu'est-ce qu'il y a?
Je ne sais pas, ce matin, il était tout en pleurs.
Entre jalousie,
Prostituée.
folie, disques,
Je ne veux même pas que ma colère monte.
mais surtout l'amour qui leur lie depuis l'enfance. Tourbillon saison 2, bientôt sur les chaînes du groupe BT Media.
Good afternoon, televiewers, and welcome to yet another exciting edition of ESR. ESR is your favorite program where we celebrate the women folk. Of course, we celebrate the women's folk because it's said that once you train a woman, you build a nation. Women are nation builders, always offering a shoulder to cry on. And of course, today, our topic for today is centered around divorce. High rates of divorce, who is to blame? Now, join me in the studio in the studio, I have Petula B. You're welcome.
Thank you. It's another beautiful edition. Thank you once more for inviting